Detective Hannah Cross arrived at the scene of the gruesome murder, just as dawn broke over the small, isolated town of Red Lake. The air was heavy with fog, and the bloodied cabin at the edge of the forest seemed like something pulled from a nightmare. "Third one this month," said Officer Gregg, his voice trembling as he handed Hannah a file. Same pattern. Victim tied to a chair, throat slit, and a single message carved into the wall. "The Watcher sees all." Hannah shivered as she stepped into the dimly lit cabin. The victim, a middle-aged man, stared lifelessly at the ceiling. The blood pooling beneath his chair glistened in the weak sunlight streaming through the shattered window. She studied the wall, where the chilling message was scrawled in jagged letters, and felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. The town was no stranger to tragedy. 10 years ago, a local boy named Oliver Griggs had disappeared without a trace. Whispers of occult activity and a mysterious cult had circled ever since, but no concrete evidence had ever surfaced. Hannah, a newcomer to Red Lake, had taken a special interest in the case. Something about it felt personal, though she couldn't explain why. "Any witnesses?" she asked Gregg. "None, but—" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if the shadows might be listening. "Some folks swear they've seen a figure in the woods, a man with glowing eyes." Hannah dismissed the idea as small-town superstition and delved deeper into the case. She interviewed residents, combed through old records, and even visited the eerie, overgrown cemetery on the outskirts of town. Every lead brought her back to the same name, Oliver Griggs. The missing boy's family had vanished shortly after his disappearance, leaving behind their crumbling house near the lake. One stormy night, armed with a flashlight and her service weapon, Hannah decided to investigate the Griggs house. The windows were boarded up and the door groaned ominously as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and decay. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and in the center of the room stood a makeshift altar, adorned with animal bones and melted candles. As she scanned the room, a faint sound reached her ears, a child's laughter, echoing from the basement. Her pulse quickened as she descended the creaking stairs, gun drawn. The basement was cold and dark, the faint smell of earth mingling with something metallic. In the corner she found an old rusted cage. Inside was a pile of bones, too small to be an adult's. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging the room into darkness. Her flashlight flickered as she turned to see a shadowy figure looming in the corner. It stepped forward, revealing a man with glowing, unnatural eyes. He smiled, his teeth sharp and predatory. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice a guttural growl. "The Watcher doesn't like visitors." Hannah fired her weapon, but the figure moved with inhuman speed, disappearing into the shadows. The basement erupted into chaos as the symbols on the walls began to glow, and an otherworldly hum filled the air. Hannah stumbled backward, her head spinning as the walls seemed to close in around her. Just as she thought she was about to lose consciousness, a deafening roar shook the room. The glowing symbols shattered like glass, and the shadowy figure let out a blood-curdling scream. Out of the shadows stepped Oliver Griggs, no longer a boy, but a man with weathered features and eyes that burned with fire. In his hands, he held a shotgun loaded with silver rounds. "You're late," he said, tossing Hannah a second gun. "That thing isn't human, and we've got one chance to kill it." Hannah stared at him in shock, but the urgency in his voice snapped her back to reality. Together, they unleashed a barrage of silver bullets at the creature, which writhed and shrieked before collapsing into a heap of ash. The room fell silent, save for the sound of their heavy breathing. What the hell was that?" Hannah managed to say. Oliver smirked. "That? Just one of many. You think Red Lake's cursed? You don't know the half of it." Before she could ask another question, Oliver threw her a bag filled with strange weapons and artifacts. "Welcome to the fight, Detective. This town has secrets you're not ready for, but you will be." And with that, the boy she had been chasing for a decade disappeared into the night, leaving Hannah to confront the horrifying truth. The murders weren't the work of a serial killer. They were sacrifices to keep something far worse at bay.